Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Joshua Harris. So I decided to write something because the whole Ferguson, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, the guy at Walmart, whose name I don't remember right now, thing going on. Um, and the reason why I decided to write something was because people who were otherwise great people, awesome toward me, whatever else, seemed to be almost apathetic. Um, and I realized what it was is their sympathy failed them, and they didn't know to use empathy. Sympathy is saying, I understand what you're going through because I've gone through the same thing, so I feel your pain. Empathy is saying, I don't understand what you're going through. I can't. But I respect what you're going through, and that is real. And, I'm there for you, whatever else. It's not pity. Like, oh, I feel bad for you. It's actionable. Empathy is actionable. Um, so, to give you a little background, what's going on here. So, I left for the Marine Corps boot camp 2 days after Christmas in 2004. And the only reason I left then was because we left a day or two earlier than we were supposed to. I was supposed to leave day after Christmas, the day I was supposed to leave. Um, so December 27th, 2004. And 10 days before that, 10 or 11 days before that, I believe it was, an incident happened, which I reference in here. Um, and I didn't fight it, even though the punishment didn't match the crime, because I didn't necessarily have the time for that. Because I was leaving, obviously I wasn't going to be following up on it. Didn't really care. I knew I wouldn't be driving for a while. I planned on going to Okinawa, which I did. Went to Okinawa for 2 years. So I got out of the Marine Corps in 2010, April of 2010. I did 5 year enlistment, and then I extended like 4 more months. And I got off active duty, and then run-ins with cops, which are also mentioned here. Pretty much everything mentioned here is either in 2004, right before I left for boot camp, or in 2010, right after I got out of the Marine Corps. Like the same year that I was on active duty, got off. In that same year, everything here is mentioned. Mentioned here is talking about being in Jacksonville, North Carolina, or Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, um, one of two places. And for me, I guess things are a little more difficult because I feel that I can better understand where police officers are coming from, some of the things they have to deal with, um, from deploying. Not only did I go to Okinawa for 2 years, and I deployed for a total of a year, 8 months. First time, second time was 4 months. Then I got medevac. Um, so I know what it's like to wake up to incoming sirens, whatever else. Take a helicopter ride in the dead of night. The lights are out in the helicopter. You don't even necessarily see it coming in. You just hear it. It's got like a couple of running lights. Maybe like one or two on the actual pylons themselves. There's no other lights on there. You take off in the dead of night. Like I was saying before. Anyway, skimming low, staying low, a little bit over the treetops, whatever else, because someone might shoot you down with RPG to land in a place where they take you up to the rooftop, which is all of 1 story tall, maybe. Point out, say that right there, that village, don't go there, don't go anywhere near there. That's 100% contact, which means someone's going to shoot at you. That's what contact is. So I understand. I understand being in a situation where people don't want you there, doing a job for maybe something you believe in, or the person to the right or left of you because you don't know what else to do. Um, doesn't matter why you're doing the job so much as the fact that you are doing the job. I do understand that, though I don't understand what it's like to be a cop. I do understand um, being served food by people that look exactly like the people that want to kill you, and they don't look like you. Neither one of them two look like you. And just trusting that that person serving you food doesn't have it out for you. Over searching trucks at the entrance to the gate, which I did that before. Searching people with gloves. So I've had to do the actual TSA like pat down searches, but the real ones where you come up underneath the arms, check up under the chest, come down and around, make sure you're pulling in the clothing. I've had to do all that. And just hoping that there's not razor blades in someone's clothing, that someone isn't strapped with a bomb that's going to blow you up. If someone's vehicle doesn't have a bomb that's going to blow you up. Searching the vehicle not just for something simple as contraband, But we're actually searching for explosives, for weapons, for things that could harm and kill us. Um, so I do understand that. I really do. But, but, why is it that if I were to have snapped or misjudged something and accidentally killed someone over there, I'm using the quote fingers because I don't think that some of these things that are happening are actually accidents. Um, at the very, very best, I think is criminal negligence, and that is neglecting to follow procedure at the very least. But anyway, if I were to have accidentally killed someone over there, why would it have been such a bigger thing, an international incident? Why would it have been worse than having police kill someone here for reasons that it's not just like conspiracy theorists saying, "Oh no, this wasn't right." There's a lot of people saying this wasn't right for very good, logical, legal reasons. But so yeah, so I decided to write this because some people just really don't get it. They don't understand what the heck is going on. Why are you so upset about it? They don't. Some of them do get that it's not necessarily just about these situations, and it really isn't just about these situations. Not saying that they're taken out of consideration, but that there is a lot of things that are going into that are weighing into the reaction that's happening right now. I'm not condoning riots or looting. I'm saying with the protests and people being upset. Why is this happening? Because it's stuff we deal with every single day. This isn't just something that just happened the other, oh, that just happened right there, and why is everyone getting so worked up about it? Y'all shoot each other all the time. I'm not gonna touch that one. So the best way I can explain it honestly is two ways actually. It takes two analogies to really get a good explanation in. Like a woman says to a man, "You can't understand the pain of childbirth," and she's right. Even though scientifically, a man getting kicked in the down there, it's supposed to be like 17 times more painful. It's like ridiculous, but it doesn't last nearly as long as labor does. There's no positive reward at the end. I mean, I don't know unless you're weird and into that. Whatever. There's no like, let's do it again because this kid is awesome, this was so worth it, etc., etc. That doesn't happen. So it's really apples and oranges. At best, you can compare pain, and the man might win for that brief period of time. But it doesn't add up to the hours that labor might be. And honestly, I'd rather have that brief period of time than the hours of labor. It's kind of the same thing with racism. If you're white, you may experience racism. You're probably going to experience it from an individual, though. Maybe even from a community. That's less common, but it might be. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And you might even experience racism that's worse than what some of us black people or minorities have faced. That's entirely possible. The difference is, it's not the same systemic oppression, if you get what I'm saying. It's not as prevalent. It's not as common. Okay? It's uncommon. Why are these people being like this to me? This is unnecessary. It's not, oh, this is life, I need to get used to it. For instance, okay, well, let me get to my second example, and I'll get back to my for instance, because it'll make more sense here. So the second example to tie in there is being a woman. I obviously don't understand what it's like, but I understand that there is a lot of flirting goes on, sexual advances and or harassment. I don't understand that. I really don't. I don't deal with that every day. I don't know how draining that can be, how annoying, frustrating, blah, blah. I don't know. Being labeled according to what you're wearing, or just what you are, regardless of what you're wearing. You're still having some sort of label no matter what. I can understand that. I don't understand being a woman. I don't understand what they go through, but I can understand parts of that. I can understand being harassed or feeling uncomfortable constantly in your own skin because of how someone else relates to you, how comfortable someone else is with you and who you are, regardless of how comfortable you are in and of yourself. Being labeled no matter what clothing you're wearing because someone thinks to tell you that you're a thug, or you're a skater, or you're a prep, or you're not that black, or you're this, you're that, you're whatever. You're one of the good black people because you don't dress like them. When I say nigger, I'm not talking about you. You're cool. I just mean those people over there that are rude and whatever else. So if you put those two together, right? If if you put the systemic oppression together with the constant harassment, whatever else, or just the being uncomfortable because you never know what's going to pop up for no reason in ways that you can't always predict or do much about. That's kind of like what it's like to be black. And just like women aren't always going to tell you all the times they've been harassed or hit on or someone's flirting with them, whatever else, or they've been judged. Same thing with being black. We're not even interested in talking about it all the time. We get tired of hearing it, let alone living it. So anytime that you hear, it's not the one time that this happened in forever, most likely. It's one of many times that this person felt was obvious enough to actually bring up to you, or they were just bubbling over and it finally came to a head. And that's what's happening right now. Things have been bubbling over and now they're coming to a head. So this is my version of an open letter. I'm not even sure that I completely understand what an open letter is. I think it's just, a letter to anyone, or a letter anyone can read to a specific person, institution. But I'm a spoken word artist, so this is my spoken letter. I'm sorry, pause real quick. My camera's up here, my screen's down here, so you're going to see my eyes flicking down here. That's why. Anyway, this is more like a spoken window into some of what black people go through on a regular basis, some more than others. If you're not part of the problem, I'm not talking about you, but I'm still talking to you. I'm speaking to everyone. This isn't aimed at any specific individuals I know personally. This is a response to some people who seem to think that black people should just, calm down. And they're not quite sure what the fuss is about because things seem to be getting better and not worse. And it really is not all that bad right now, considering. First off, I would like to say that the Civil Rights Act happened about the time the computers were first interconnected. Not the internet as we know it, but computers were first interconnected. Before DARPANET, first interconnected at all, period. Now I've got a phone that's like 16 gigs of memory storage on it. And that's because I didn't want to feel like getting a 32 gig one, because I just got this nice little tiny memory chip that has 32 gigs of memory on it. And it was cheaper than an upgraded phone. There we go. And I can move it. So now I can bring my music to my next phone or whatever else. That's how far we've gone. In 20, 30 years, we went to this from those gigantic phones. Now, very few people have house phones. But we still have a case in North Carolina I was reading about where this kid was, at least they think he was lynched. He definitely was hung from a swing set, from a play set. And they think it had something to do with the fact that he had a relationship with a 32-year-old white lady. He was a 17-year-old black kid who played football. I don't know. It hasn't really been substantiated. The problem is that police looked at it and called it suicide. The coroner looked at him and said, no, he's obviously been beaten. The police said it looks like ant bites, and the coroner said no, it looks like someone has been badly beaten. So that case is they're bringing the FBI into it, so I can't say anything definitively, obviously, right now. But that's the type of stuff that's still going on now. All the rest of these situations, whatever, most of the ones that people are talking about are cops. This wasn't even like the cops did it, as far as anyone knows. This is just as far as we're able to tell right now, it looks like something that the cops just brushed off. But obviously, it's not anything we know for sure until it's been properly looked through. What we do know is the things we've had on freaking video camera and everything else that's happening right now. All this stuff is still happening. No guilt, no shame, no blame, just the truth. Because the truth is the only thing that will set us free. Dr. Breakthrough. We were disenfranchised before we knew what that word meant. It's possible to graduate in some places at a 6th grade reading level, so some of us are most literate in the language of loss. Naughty-haired wishes, flung from broken homes at public dream catchers, both mothers and teachers hoping that something will stick. We were meant to be miracles. Superposition phenomena packed with immeasurably powerful potential, yet destined to be deterministic by junior high, by people flatlining these children of God on sight. Maybe that's why they attempt to predict the future of those they've already relegated to the past tense. Now things are past tense and moving towards hostile, but really aren't that bad, considering. The problem is that word, considering. Considering what? We weren't born to hate, but we knew what neighborhoods we weren't wanted, and not long after we knew the ones that welcomed us, they would lock their doors as we went past, clutching their clutches more tightly as though my young clutches were frightening. I was taught, son, there are some people that will fear you for your education just as much as your skin, and sadly, both are true. I graduated in a neighborhood where we dressed in common because we wanted something to identify with. So we identified with the profile before we fully realized what our clothing even meant. There are David stars sewn into the eyes of stars missing fathers, so they never truly learned what it meant to be a son. See, they don't just shoot at silhouettes on ranges. Soon we learned that even naked, just dressed in the flesh that God gave us, we were still being painted as targets. But I guess it isn't that bad, considering. We used to pause, hands up showing the lightest parts of our soul, hoping that you'd find something in common, hearts beating and open palms that are suddenly large enough to hold the whole of our futures. We take our very lives in our hands every single time that you stop us. Because if those palms drop, so do we. Now we might anyway, just because you weren't taught that not everyone is the same, because of the color of the skin they cannot change, but it really isn't that bad, right? Considering. Decades ago they said we were only 3/5 men. That was more than was believed a few years before that. I'm not saying they still believe us only 3/5, but maybe it takes about 5/6 of a man for some to even see us as half. I did the math. They called my grown father boy, and I was just a boy. But I knew more than a child should have to, like how to keep my mouth shut when the cops harassed. A man in a suit listening to sermons, tie hanging from rearview mirror with the sun beside him because, apparently, a motorhome was too nice for skin and tones such as these. So before even asking for proof of ownership, they would say, hey boy, whose vehicle is this you driving? We didn't just stop there. In 2010, they pulled me over in Philadelphia, of all places, and said, whose car is this? Partner with my license and registration in hand. And still he said, your hair doesn't match the clothes in the back. I wasn't aware that sweaters weren't fit for dreaded blacks. I apologize, officer, but really, I haven't had it that bad, considering. So, how would you explain being harassed? By the very same authorities you're trying to teach your child to respect without sounding like a fool or biting your own tongue in frustration. What do you tell a black kid who still thinks the cops are cool, to prepare them for the reality that the sentiment might not be returned when they are no longer just cute? How would you explain to someone you love more than your very life that in some places they are dark enough to die, no matter their shade, just for the crime of living? That Rosewood and 12 Years a Slave aren't based off of fairy tales, that the most likely boogie monster in America has the same skin tone as the past 43 commanders-in-chief and the 14 presidents of Continental Congress before them. There is something wrong when there are places where F the police is arguably less pejorative than a statement of self-defense. Who do you call when you aren't sure who you should be more afraid of, the police or the criminal? But it's not that bad, considering. There's a street not far from the house where I spent most of my childhood that is aptly named Division. It is effectively an economic and therefore racial divide, with the glaring exception of the school that is on the wrong side of the line. Our train tracks had stoplights and we were on the good side. We lived with the Jews and the Catholics. My grandmother lives on the other. We had one other black family on our block. And they and our co-joined neighbors in the duplex that we stayed didn't really talk to us for years. When we moved in, those co-joined neighbors threatened to call the cops because one wheel of the moving van was on their side of a grassy divide that was exactly as wide as a lawnmower blade, with the wheels on the sidewalk on either side. I know this because I mowed both of our sides of that strip for years, but they would only mow theirs. It really could have been worse, though, considering. We lived in the capital of the state that once held the capital of the United States and still holds the Liberty Bell, only 2 hours away, yet 10 minutes away. The west shore of the Susquehanna River is unofficially known as the White Shore. By all the black kids who know from experience, when I was 18, I took a right turn on red from a full stop. I should have been paying more attention to the signs that said no turn on red. When I was pulled over, I spoke to the officer like I would speak to my dad. He was simply officer or sir to me. Let me explain. I was in my mother's car with my 2 brothers. A do-rag and basketball clothes, plus I brought my melanin from home. I probably should have left it behind as a backup. He felt the need to call backup, and I ended up with 3 points on my license and a $110 fine for my first driving offense. I should have remembered that I was on the wrong side of the river. I wish I could say I was just kidding, But it really wasn't all that bad, considering. I remember being stopped and questioned, but stopped isn't accurate because I was already standing still. Though apparently in the wrong place, I could have thrown a rock and hit my apartment across the street. I was on public property, under a street light, and in plain view from three different directions. I had just gotten off of active duty pardon me. I just gotten off active duty in the Marine Corps. My parting shot to the officers was that I was going to go inside where it is safe. I meant where it's safe to be black. My parents taught me better self-defense against those who are sworn to protect and defend us. Since being in the military, I see the boys in blue as our domestic cousins. It hurts not be trusted by both your cousins and your Uncle Sam, with illegitimate children that an American never wanted. By now, all of us have a little bit of you inside. Our bloodlines are mixed with those who used to oppress us. How can you persecute yourself? But it's really not all that bad, considering. I was pulled over at a DUI checkpoint, asked to get out of my car, and if they could search it. They wanted to know if I was on bath salts. I said, is that even a thing? Like, how do you do it? I'd already told them that I was tired, having gotten off of work, trying to meet up with a friend, only to drive an hour in the wrong direction. Their reasoning for the search was that I look lethargic. I guess I wasn't supposed to know that lethargic means sluggish, which is exactly how you look if you were tired and then drove the wrong way for an hour, only to turn around in the dead of night. They wouldn't even allow me to text my friend to tell her why I was running later than I had originally said I would be, but it really wasn't that bad, considering. I've been told countless times, usually by someone white, that I'm not that black, or that someone else is blacker than I, merely because of my bearing and elocution, my vocabulary and habit of carrying around a book. I was basically disowned by my own race after learning not to disown them because we both initially related as though black and educated, or well-spoken, or classy were mutually exclusive, even though I had been taught better. There were exceptions to my assessment, but I was mostly related to them or already knew them, and most people aren't exceptions by the very nature of the word. I knew what it meant to wish that I wasn't black before I even hit high school. And it wasn't simply because I thought it would be cooler to be another race. I just got tired of dealing with the consequences of the color of my face. Though I knew too much of my history for that to last long, it's still a shame that it ever was. And really, I never had it all that bad, considering. I'm still trying to figure out where I want to live. And I jokingly tell people that I'm trying to find the perfect mix of warm weather and racism. Because it seems like you must have one or must deal with one to have the other, and I wish I could say I was only joking. But when people say that racism is dead, I'm invariably tempted to look up their area code because maybe that's a place I would like to raise my kids someday. But no matter what, I'm pretty sure they won't have it that bad, considering. Because my grandpa used to drive trucks for a living. Until the time when they still had segregated fountains at truck stops. My coworkers are in their mid-50s, one white, and from Texas, the other black, and from Mississippi, and the white one tells of integration at elementary school, where the black one tells of how it didn't happen until he was in junior high. My father was taught to read by sight. Even though they disproved it to work 40 years before his time, let me put this into perspective. Emmett Till was murdered only 60 years ago, and my mom is 55. Medgar Evers was shot in 1963, Malcolm X in 65, Dr. King in 68, and my dad was born in 1960. They passed the Civil Rights Act when he was 4 years old. It's amazing that people think that everything began with the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, if you think we should just stop talking about race to fix it, that things will just work themselves out over time, then maybe you didn't know that from 1863 to 1865, it was still legal to own slaves as far north as Maryland. And blacks still didn't have the right to vote for 5 years after that. But it really wasn't that bad, considering. I appreciate the desire to sympathize, really. To try to see things through our eyes. My pigment challenged brothers and sisters telling tales of a cruel or ignorant individual, but it's hard to compare the facts when we bear an entire system on our backs. And yes, it might help if we started wearing slacks, but every murdered name that I mentioned wore suits to their death. This Atlas impression is getting old. Wearing to the bone like Josiah Henson, carrying his children to freedom strapped to his back while traversing over mountains. This is not metaphorical. When Uncle Tom left his cabin, he never came back, not even for book royalties. My mother's side of the family came from a state 600 miles plus south of the lady who sang a strange fruit swinging in the breeze. That song isn't beautiful so much as sad to me because sometimes, instead of swinging, they're just shot from point-blank range like at Fruitville Station. And then the killer is acquitted of both murder 2 and voluntary manslaughter, sentenced to only 2 years minus time served in a private cell because, apparently, a gun can forgivably be confused with a taser by a trained professional who daily carries both. We served our purpose and they told us to go home. Even though this is the only home that we've known for generations, perhaps we leave if we even had a place to go back to in the first place, definitively trace my genealogy to something more specific than the continent. Perhaps we can talk, but maybe we haven't had all that bad. Considering. I could have gotten shot 50 times, like Sean Bell, the day before his wedding. They could have actually given my cousin that Texas sleigh ride that they promised. I could have gotten shot by that kid whose house we were visiting when my dad was preaching at his church. He threatened to kill me and call me a nigger. Wanted to get his dad's AK because I beat him at a video game. I could still live in Pennsylvania. 15 minutes away from Camp Hill, where the KKK sent out a flyer to renew their charter just a year or two ago. I could have been Rodney King about the time that I was 5 years old. I could have been Eric Gardner. I could have been Ground Zero, 9/11. I could have been in the gas chambers of Hitler. Honestly, seriously though, what is it that we're considering? Yes, we've made strides from what we used to be, and we still are, but it's been half of a century since Dr. King had a dream. And now people are almost as tired of hearing about racism as we are dealing with it. So maybe it's that we aren't doing all that well, considering.